FaZe were eliminated yesterday from Epicenter 2017, the group stage, by Virtus Pro of all people in a full best of three. So this is a super, super surprising result. And I think it brings up this topic that's becoming more and more noticeable with FaZe. And that's that they're not a super straightforward team in the pick and ban phase. Yeah, there's that weird phase pun. But anyway, yeah, if you look at phases, pick and ban phases, going all the way back to the previous lineup, I think there's some very risky, interesting moves that they do, and I think that's only increasing with time as FaZe gets more confident in their lineup as they continue to have success. So the first place I actually want to start with here is going back to the previous lineup is IEM Sydney, and I think this is obviously a very famous sequence where karrigan and or the multiple entities on FaZe. It doesn't necessarily always have to be just karrigan, but for the purpose of this video, I'll just say karrigan. That karrigan makes some pretty risky choices. So at IEM Sydney in like round 2 of the Swiss, and that was like an 8-team Swiss, they play Astralis. Astralis beat FaZe in the finals of IEM Katowice. Then FaZe beat Astralis in the finals of was it Star Ladder Season 3, the I-League, what's it called? The Star Ladder I-League Star Series Season 3. Yeah, that super long name. But yeah, no, in this thing there's this weird back and forth with Cobblestone because it's both teams permaban. So in the best of one, Astralis removed Cash, FaZe removed Inferno and Overpass. Astralis then removes Nuke and Mirage, then FaZe removes Train, and Cobblestone's left over. Now you can see why Astralis bans their 6th best map rather than their 7th best map first in Cash, because FaZe have the 6th ban. They assume that someone's going to have to ban Cobblestone sooner or later. Both teams hate Cobblestone. They perma-ban it. They're always using their first ban in best of 3s, and they never play in best of 1s. So, that's got to be FaZe. But FaZe actually, in their first round of bans Inferno and Overpass. Now, Inferno is probably a map that they probably would like to play in the 7th, as the remainder map is the best of 1 map. So that's a super surprising thing. I think that shows even early on that FaZe wanted to go to Cobblestone. It wasn't like a, what was it called? The was it playing chicken, like in Akira, where the 2 motorbikes are running straight at each other, and the first one to dodge is sort of lose, or to tilt and avoid conflict is sort of the chicken, right? But anyway, yeah. So FaZe decides to lead, and FaZe and Astralis decide to let Cobblestone go all the way through. Goes to Cobblestone. Astralis win handedly 16-7. In a post-game interview, famously, karrigan says, "Oh, well, we were saving our strats. That wasn't a good indication." If you actually watch that game, it seems like FaZe did. If you go back and look at it on their T side, FaZe was already pretty down because they lost, I think, their T side pistol. So it makes they didn't seem like they were doing like full SQs. They were doing sort of like dry peaks and stuff like that, and just getting wrecked by Astralis to close out that game. So it sort of makes sense. But actually, Glaive didn't buy it. It said on social media that karrigan's lying or something crazy like that. And of course, in the best of 3, Astralis goes ahead and removes Cash first. Their 6th best map. FaZe removes Overpass, Astralis' best map. And then Astralis actually go ahead and pick Cobblestone because I think, well, we won versus FaZe handily last time on Cobblestone. Let's just go ahead and pick it. And of course, FaZe comes out with a killer T side, I believe, in the first half. And Astralis loses that game. And actually, Astralis won on FaZe's next pick of Nuke. So if they picked, I don't know, Inferno there, or a Train, probably Train there, they could have maybe just closed the series out 2-0 and won the 3rd best of 3 series in that trio of series. But FaZe won Cobblestone, and they ended up winning the decider of Train. Oh, well, okay, I guess FaZe did win the decider of Train, so you can't really say that. Maybe if Astralis picked Inferno there, that might have given them a better chance. But anyway, yeah, this is obviously a thing that made Kerrigan look super genius, super mind gamey, right? He's playing this, you know, game outside of the actual game of Counter-Strike with his opponent, and he comes out super on top. It looks like he's a mastermind. But, I mean, you gotta realize that this is a huge risk, too. Not necessarily a risk that outweighs the reward in terms of probability and the value of the negative. But, it's a risk. You gotta remember that if FaZe did lose that Cobblestone game in the Swiss system, and they played North, and they only beat North 19-16. This was the third round of the Swiss. Now, if Astralis and SK played in the third round of the Swiss as well, and the loser of that game, which happened to be Astralis, I believe, then gets upset in the fourth round of the Swiss, then Astralis and FaZe could play again in the fifth round of the Swiss. Or, conversely, if Astralis beat SK and SK got upset, that it could be FaZe playing the fifth round of the Swiss, assuming that they lost to North, because it's a pretty close game. If North doesn't beat if FaZe doesn't beat North there, they could have been in a fifth round scenario versus SK or Astralis to just make it out of groups. So I mean, there's definitely some risks here, and they don't even know in the best of 3 if they're gonna beat Astralis on Cobblestone. That's a very unproven map for both teams. Even if FaZe have been practicing that, practice is not always a good indication of how good you're going to be on land, because when you practice it, it's first of all, it's online, so there's going to be different sort of interactions there because of latency, obviously, and there's also, tensions could be divided, or people might not be playing at their full strength, or they might be playing safer because of the LAN environment, or conversely, the LAN environment might make someone play differently because of the pressure, and they might actually take more risk. Like Glaive famously does that Tech9 rush to turn around their game versus Virtus.pro in the finals of the E-League Major on the third map of Train, right? I think it's definitely a risk here. Now, I think winning the series and having the psychological Cobblestone advantage, having this Cobblestone advantage in the pick and ban phase moving forward is obviously a huge outweighs the possible negative event. Yeah, because from now on, Astralis are going to have to ban Cobblestone if they play in best of 3. Now, of course, the old lineup of FaZe and Astralis never met again. But, if they did, that would have been a huge advantage. But, that was the old lineup. But with the new lineup, I think you're going to see, with increasing frequency, these sort of risky, huge upside, but also huge downside moves. So, actually, the first one, chronologically, is another best of 3 match versus Astralis. I wish I didn't have to talk about Astralis twice in a row, but yeah, this is what happened chronologically. I think you see FaZe doing this with the new lineup, doing something super risky again in the finals of the E-League Major. So first ban, FaZe removes Train, then Astralis removes Cobblestone. So they kept that advantage even going into the new lineup, and this is like many months later. I think the IEM Sydney tournament was early May or late April. So this is a good advantage that FaZe won. But FaZe, with their first pick, goes ahead and picks Cache. So that's a surprising pick. I'll go through the rest of the pick and ban, and then I'll talk about Cache. So Astralis then picks Overpass, their best map. Then Astralis removes Mirage, FaZe's best map. FaZe removes Nuke, and Inferno is left over. So the thing that really stands out here is that Cache pick. Cache is probably Astralis' weakest map besides Cobblestone. So there's obviously an advantage there. You think, I guess I should have said this to begin with, you think that FaZe would pick Mirage there because Mirage is probably far and away FaZe's best map with this new lineup. They're probably the best team in the world on Mirage next to SK with Phelps. Now, you don't see SK with Phelps because SK with Bolts currently exists. We might see SK with Phelps later. Okay, you can talk about the SK series versus FaZe later, which I'll talk about that in a minute, but where they actually lost on Mirage. But anyway, or FaZe actually, Yeah, FaZe lost to Mirage, I think. Yeah, so but what's surprising here is that they don't do the straightforward thing and pick Mirage as their first pick, because that's a middle of the map pool for Astralis. Astralis lose on Mirage. It's a map that they allow people to pick into them, and they can do decently. It's like sort of like how they had with Nuke at the beginning of 2017, where they let people pick it into them, namely VP, and they could play it, and it actually got good enough later where they actually started picking it. But it's a map they're just decent on. So you think that FaZe has a clear advantage, they're the best team in the world on Mirage, or maybe the best team in the world next to SK with Phelps, and Astralis is just a good team on Mirage. But they don't do that. They go with Cash, which is not a map that FaZe has ever played on LAN other than a game versus VP, which they won. And we can talk about FaZe versus VP later. But Virtus.Pros obviously was a super bad team for a super long time, just not winning any LAN games and struggling online as well. So, what does that Cash pick really mean? Now, you could say that they practice Cash, but of course, like I said before, I don't think practice means a lot. You can't rely on that as a metric of success. You actually have to play it on LAN, I think. Of course, you can't always, a new team has to try things out on LAN for the first time, but you always have to weigh LAN results much more highly than practice or online results. But yeah, no. So what FaZe is really doing is, one, they're going lower in Astralis' map pool and going lower in their own map pool. But the advantage they're getting is that Astralis isn't prepared to play Cash. They would assume it's Mirage, and FaZe obviously knows they're going to pick Cash, and they can prepare for that. So I think what I would say about this pick and ban phase is it's like a wash. Like, I think the first one with the IEM Sydney, the Cobblestone Madness, was actually, in FaZe's favor. But I think this one's sort of a wash. I know that Thorns of the opinion, I think he said this in a Counterpoints episode, that he thought it was a really good idea. That it's, you can take risks because you're the best team in the world, that you can try to throw off your opponents. But I think moving from a map where you're better than your opponent and you're like the best team in the world, to sort of an uncertain map for you and like a kind of bad map for them, but you have an information advantage, isn't a clear advantage. You're really putting it in sort of a toss-up scenario. You're risking things. It's uncertain whether or not you win that game. If you actually remember how that was played out, Astralis wins 13 of the first 15 rounds. So if they won that second half pistol, they would have just won the game and won FaZe's map pick. And then, but of course, FaZe had that super crazy they won. No, I think FaZe won. Astralis won 12 of 15, and FaZe won 13 of 15. They won, super big CT half themselves using that classic, like, super lockdown CT side that they can have with their ultra skilled lineup. But yeah, I think this is a risk, and it's not clear if this was a good idea or a bad idea. But you can see the general inclination is to take risks, to rely on the fact that they're so strong, to play a little bit of mind games. And you can, FaZe wins Astralis' pick of Overpass, so you could obviously argue that, well, they're playing on house money. They have so much strength that they can gamble like this, and I think that's a legitimate argument. But yeah, I think this is just a good indication that FaZe likes to take risks, and we'll see that again in a minute. But before we do that, I want to show that FaZe also can do pretty standard pick and ban phases, and it can be their opponents that's good a risk. And I don't want to paint too broad of a brush that FaZe is just doing crazy things every time. So let's look at the Epicenter best of 3 match versus SK. Now, this is a match where SK beat Virtus.Pro in their opening rounds, and SK have Bolt. So it's like they played Virtus.Pro, and Virtus.Pro was thought, because they haven't done anything previously, to be a pretty bad team. So that the best of 3 win versus Virtus.Pro with the new SK team, and like that's like not a super good indication of anything. Really can't trust that. Doesn't really tell you that much. Just like I said, that FaZe beating Virtus.Pro and Cash doesn't really tell you that much. So going into this SK Best of 3 series, FaZe plays it pretty standard. They remove Cobblestone first, their permaban. SK removes their permaban, Nuke. SK picks Inferno, which looks weird, but I can talk about it in a minute. SK picks Overpass, which is a super, super weird pick because FaZe have obviously proven to be very, very good on Overpass because they could beat Astralis on Overpass, and they also have won other games. FaZe removes Train. They don't like Train that much. SK removes Cash. They go back and forth with Cash, and Mirage is left over, which is a map both teams really love. But that's what I was about to say with FaZe picking Inferno. You think they might want to pick Mirage there versus SK, but they know that SK also plays Mirage, so it could be still in the best of 3 series, even though they don't pick it first. So I think picking Inferno there was a good choice, and that's obviously a map that SK have been struggled on previously with their old lineup with Phelps. So, I think this is a perfectly standard, perfectly good pick and ban FaZe. I don't think they're doing anything crazy here. And, this is just a well thought out pick and ban FaZe. And SK are the one that's doing something super crazy with that Overpass pick. And, it just happens to work out for SK there. I think it's just super surprising that they could beat FaZe on Overpass with Phelps rather than Fur in the lineup. Maybe, we can see a resurgence of SK on their old map pool with Overpass and Train rather than Cobblestone and Mirage because of, that was how SK used to play when they had FNX rather than Phelps. And it took them a while to adjust to Phelps and slowly change the map pool. I thought it was going to be a slower adjustment back to their old map pool, but maybe they can play Train and Overpass right now, or maybe just Overpass. We'll see. But anyway, that's just a good, standard, solid pick and ban FaZe by FaZe, but the last one is obviously a super contentious one as well, where FaZe are doing some really risky stuff, and this is going to be the Virtus Pro series. So first, FaZe remove Nuke. Virtus Pro remove Overpass. FaZe pick Mirage, their best map. That's a pretty obvious pick. Virtus Pro pick Cobblestone. FaZe remove Train. Virtus Pro remove Cash, and then Inferno's left over. What's weird about this one is obviously that FaZe did not ban Cobblestone, their typical first ban in a best of 3, always been in a best of 1 permaban pick, or permaban map. They banned Nuke, which is Virtus Pro's classic map, the map they're still good on despite being a bad team now. So there's obviously a certain logic to FaZe removing Nuke. Nuke's not super high on their map pool anymore with the new lineup. And Virtus Pro's obviously pretty good on Nuke. But, there's obviously a downside to picking Cobblestone. FaZe aren't proven on Cobblestone. This is a 7th map to the pool. Most teams just practice 6 maps, so playing Cobblestone probably means they had to look into Cobblestone and think about Cobblestone and think about a 7th map. And it's also a map that Virtus Pro were previously pretty good on. It's not like Virtus Pro were known to be a bad Cobblestone team. When they were at the peak of their powers, it was Train, Cobblestone, and Nuke that were their 3 best maps, with Cobblestone probably beating their second best map, like Gambit and Virtus Pro were both really good at, probably the best 2 teams in the world at Cobblestone at the beginning of 2017. So, this is obviously a super risky thing. And you can obviously see the thought process there that, this the only chance that Virtus Pro has a map, the only map that Virtus Pro has a chance on is going to be Nuke. So let's just take that out of the equation and try Cobblestone, and we can use the experience that we get on Cobblestone. We can prove that we're a good team on Cobblestone versus a bad team Virtus Pro. That upset versus Gambit didn't mean anything. They're still a bad team. Let's just play it. And, I think that's a little bit of arrogance on both accounts. The fact that they think they can, or that the pick and ban pays seems to indicate that they think they can play 7 maps, and they think that Virtus Pro can just be used as a petri dish, as a testing ground. And this obviously came back to bite them as they as they lost that best of 3 series. Now, of course, that's results oriented thinking. What do I think of the actual pick and ban phase? If I think the first one, the Cobblestone Dilemma versus Astralis at IMCNE was plus, and that the cash pick versus Astralis at E League was a wash. I think this one slightly tends towards negative, but you can obviously see the thinking behind it and make an argument for why you think it was a great pick, or why you think it was a good decision, and you can bolster that argument with the phase sort of rule, the phase exception, the phase caveat, which is that phase are super good team. They went 2 tournaments without dropping a map. That's really insane, and they can beat teams like Astralis on their best map. They're a very unique team, and they could be the team that rules the era. Now they proved here that they're not unbeatable. They lost to both. They almost lost to Gambit. They lost to SK. Now they lost to Virtus Pro, and some of their players just didn't have a good tournament here. You can't blame it all on pick and ban phase or whatever. Like I said with the SK series, I think that pick and ban phase was fine, was good. But yeah, no, you can definitely see this overarching trend that FaZe and presumably Karrigan is taking pretty big risks with their pick and bans.